and welcome to another live edition of the Open Mic TV show. I'm your host, Michael CUOMO. Welcome along on this Wednesday evening, January 30th, 2013. I have a great jam-packed show to get to with lots of news, information, some crazy stories, and more importantly, the Super Bowl 47, which will be taking place this coming Sunday. Before we jump into some things here, the phone number is on the screen on the top there, 203-234-0025. And if we can have Nick put up the Facebook and YouTube addresses. This is your chance to go on Facebook.com. Thank you, Nick. Facebook.com/OpenMicTV and YouTube.com/OpenMic80. Those are your two avenues to go on, become a fan of the Open Mic Show. You can watch replays of the Open Mic Show on the YouTube page, and you can see pretty much all the guests that I've had on over the past year and a half on the YouTube page. Before I forget, before I get to my trivia question in a second, want to thank the Advisor, the newspaper, the Advisor, for putting a very kind and detailed article out this week in their paper regarding the Open Mic TV show. In case you didn't get a chance to see it, I highly recommend you pick up a copy of the Advisor, which could be found at many places. Now, the Advisor goes out through 30,000 households in the towns of Wallingford, North Haven, Northford, and Hamden. And they did an article about my show in this week's episode. It's on page number 3 on the bottom, and it basically talks about my stint at WPAA, which is where I was doing the Open Mic Show, some of the guests that I've had on, what my vision is for the Open Mic Show, and how I got started here at NHTV. So it's a really great article. I suggest you pick up a copy of the Advisor. Again, you can probably find it at local gas stations, convenience stores, laundromats, dry cleaners, Dairy Queens, restaurants. It's pretty much a very common newspaper that's found. So if you go into a place, whether it's a supermarket or a convenience store, ask for the Advisor this week. Check out page number 3. And again, it's a great article about the Open Mic Show. So thank you to everyone at the Advisor for writing that. With that being said, I'd like to have the trivia question put up on the screen. If Nick's ready, we're going to put up our trivia question. And there it is. The trivia question this week having to do with Super Bowl Sunday, which is obviously in 4 days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, yeah. Which NFL team has played in the most Super Bowls? Now this is, I'm not going to give you any hints, but I want you to know that the answer could be more than one team. It says which NFL team. It could also be teams. So I'm just throwing it out there. That's the only hint I'll give you. But so anyway, here it is. Which NFL team or teams has played in the most Super Bowls? If you call in with a correct answer, at stake for your prize tonight is this Open Mic mug. And I know the lighting's a little bad to pick it up, but you can get your own official Open Mic with Mike CUOMO coffee mug. I mean, they're great. Great stocking stuffers. You can do whatever you want with them. They make great urine samples when you go to Quest Labs. But whatever you want to do with it, you call in with the right answer, and we'll be sure to give you a mug, whether you want to come by the studio and pick one up. We can mail it out to you, whatever. But so the question will appear periodically on the screen during the program. And again, the phone number, which I believe is going to stay on the screen for the majority of the program, is on the top right there, 203-234-0025. Give me a call. We'll obviously talk a lot about Super Bowl and sports in this particular episode of the Open Mic Show. However, I do have some national news, some local news, and some news of the weird/odd stories that I also want to address, in addition to taking your phone calls. So let's get right into it, folks. Let's start with some national news, as I usually do each and every week to start off the show. Just got a couple stories here. The most tragic of the stories, no, it's not that President Obama got reelected. It's actually the tragic nightclub fire that took place over the weekend in Brazil at a nightclub. 230 people was the last count that I had that were that succumbed to their fatalities in this, and there were over 200 people injured. So, you know, you do the math. It was a very devastating fire that apparently started when the band who was playing at this particular nightclub, they sparked the fire by launching their pyrotechnics, and then basically chaos ensued from there. You know, the club owners supposedly were closing the doors, not allowing people to leave because they thought people were actually trying to leave so they didn't have to pay, not knowing what actually happened. So people were actually trapped, being, you know, trampled on top of. Basically, they had smoke inhalation and got caught up in this fire. It was a tragedy, and I remember, must have been about 9-10 years ago, if I remember correctly, we had a fire in Rhode Island at a nightclub in which I believe 100 people died, maybe 100, 110. I don't remember the exact number. Similar circumstance. There was a band with pyrotechnics that went off, caused the fire, and basically the same thing, chaos ensued. So tragic story down in Brazil. I believe the town was Santa Maria, but I'm not 100%. So anyway, moving on to some national news here. There was another tragic story took place out of California. I don't know if you heard this, but there was it was in Newport Beach, California. There was a doctor, I think he was a urologist, around 52 years old, who was shot and killed in his own exam room by one of his patients. The patient is a 75-year-old man who basically was being seen by this doctor, and then was basically the nurses and doctors in the other rooms that were adjacent to this heard several gunshots. They actually thought it was some construction, you know, like a nail gun going off. They thought there was construction going on in the building. Little did they know their colleague and their coworker was shot and killed. So the suspect is now being held on a $1 million bail. Don't know the motive behind the shooting. Maybe it'll come up in the next day or two. But we could probably easily assume that seeing that he's 75 years old, that he will spend the rest of his life in jail. And at that point, you know, it's probably a 10, 15, 20-year maximum sentence that he'll get, because I think, you know, based on statistics, he's probably going to live to be about 85, 90, if that. So we'll see. All you Ashley Judd fans, I think she's now 44 years old, but she is in the news on a national level. She is divorcing from her husband of, I believe, 5 years. He is an Indy 500 winner on several occasions. His name is Dario Franchitti. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I know how to pronounce divorce, and that's what's going on with those two. They had a short marriage that is now going to officially be in the divorce court. So, not a big Ashley Judd fan, but hey, I just figured I would throw that out there. And then finally, on the national news front, this was a story that took place late yesterday. I apologize if I don't have all the details. I didn't hear any updates on it today, and if you have out there in TV land and you want to call and fill me in, if anyone out there heard this story, it was down in Alabama. There was a school bus driver who was shot and killed by a 60-year-old military vet who basically shot and killed this school bus driver, and then escaped by kidnapping a 6-year-old boy passenger from the school bus. And I don't know if the person who shot and killed the bus driver was picking up this 6-year-old boy whom he had a relationship with, whether it was his father, grandfather, uncle, cousin. I don't know the story behind it, but as of today, and I, when I'm saying earlier today, I don't believe this boy or this 60-year-old suspect were caught or found. I know there's a massive manhunt on the way, searching for the boy especially, and then for the murder suspect down in Alabama. So actually, and I apologize, there's actually one more story here on the national level that I just saw on my chicken scratch here. There was an elderly Georgia missionary who was an elderly Georgia missionary. He actually shot and killed a man who arrived at his house. This man was actually one of 3 brothers who just came here from Cuba, and they were going to visit a friend. They plugged in their friend's GPS or his address in their GPS. The GPS, for some reason, took them the wrong way. Ended up in this elderly Georgia missionary's driveway, and this elderly guy in Georgia confronted these brothers in their driveway, thought that he was basically going to be a victim of a home invasion, and there must have been a language barrier. Next thing you know, this Georgia missionary shoots and kills the driver of the car, one of the 3 brothers. So another tragic story, obviously a story of confusion, miscommunication, and I can see the brothers that survive this, in the society and crazy world we live in. I can see them suing the maker of the GPS, whether it was TomTom, Magellan, Garmin, and actually suing the manufacturer for what happened here, saying that if your GPS didn't bring us to this guy's house, my brother or our brother would still be alive. And I can see that happening. I mean, I'm sure there's attorneys already calling these brothers and looking to start a lawsuit. So it's been a lot of, unfortunately, not a lot of good national news over the past several days that I had to bring up to you. But nonetheless, whether it's good or bad, funny or not, I will bring it up to you here on the Open Mic Show. And speaking of bringing up, I want to remind you there on the bottom of the screen the trivia question this week, which will give you and help you land an open mic with Michael CUOMO coffee mug. I mean, what's better than this? The trivia question is, which NFL team or teams have played in the most Super Bowls? It's not which teams have won the most Super Bowls, which teams have played in the most Super Bowls. There it is on the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to give me a call and take a shot at it, it's 203-234-0025 is the number. Okay, I'm going to switch gears to some local news now, and then we'll talk sports after the local news, and then we'll get to some odd news stories, and we'll mix it all in. But we'll try to keep a consistent schedule like we do each and every week. I usually like to start with national news, go to local news, sports, and then odd stories, but we'll see how it plays out. There's a lot more in the local news front than there is on the national news. And some of these stories are funny, some are sad, some are just make you, question, oh my God, I thought I heard it all, but obviously I haven't. Let's start with a story that actually made national news but took place in Connecticut, so I'm going to leave it as a local news story. This took place in Glastonbury, Connecticut, I believe. There was a 71-year-old Westport woman who was charged with prostitution in the town of Glastonbury. Apparently they had undercover police that were staking out a motel where she was working out of, and they got the lead that she was working there from her advertisement or classified ad, which was in the paper called Backpage.com, or it was actually a website, Backpage.com. So she's advertising herself on this website, Backpage.com, and I guess the undercover police called to schedule a meeting with her. Obviously being incognito, they met up with her and arrested her on the spot. Interesting interestingly enough, the ad that this woman had her information put under on Backpage.com. I actually took a peek at it before we went on the air. It was under the section of old and saggy. I guess that's a new section that they have there. So she was on the under the old and saggy section of the Backpage.com, and now she'll be old and incarcerated. But anyway, speaking of incarcerated, there's another story here that I talked about this story going way back when I was still doing my show out of Wallingford. And if you recall me saying this story in Wallingford, you're going to say, well, Mike, you're basically repeating the same story over again. And I'm going to tell you, yes, you're correct. The story that I'm going to repeat is being repeated because the actions of this person are similar in nature today than they were 3-4 months ago. Let me clarify this for you. The story, and you probably heard about this, former WWE diva, Sunny was her wrestling name. Her real name is Tammy Sitch. She has been arrested now for a 6th time in violation of her court order that basically is a restraining order keeping her away from her ex-boyfriend. Her ex-boyfriend lives in Brantford, and when I was doing my show in Wallingford, I was basically addressing her and talking about her every week for 3 weeks in a row. Reason being is she was arrested on one occasion, thrown in jail, went to her bond hearing in front of a judge, was released. Then a couple days later, she did the same thing, broke into her ex-boyfriend's house, even though she was told to stay away. Had to go to court, same thing. She did this about 3 times in a matter of, a couple weeks. And now this is her 6th time doing this in a matter of maybe 4 or 5 months. And this time the police were called to her ex-boyfriend's house, and Tammy Sitch, who, again, a.k.a. Sunny, was found drunk inside her ex-boyfriend's shower over the weekend in Brantford. So, obviously, violating her court order. She's now being, she actually appeared in court this past Monday. I don't know what happened, but she was under a $100,000 bond. And she basically, I even know that WWE was willing to help pay for her to get treatment and send her to rehab at a facility in Pennsylvania to address her alcohol and drug problems, and apparently she hasn't taken them up on their offer. But it's sad to see what's happening to her. I mean, I remember seeing her when I was really into wrestling growing up, and beautiful young lady, very popular, seemed like she had the world in her hands. And now, here she is, fast forward 15 years later, and she seems like she's a broke, unemployed, drug addict, alcoholic, and a stalker of her ex-boyfriend. I don't know who the ex-boyfriend is. I know she was dating a wrestler at the time who I think has passed away. So I don't think it's him. So I'm curious who the ex-boyfriend is in this whole story, because I really feel bad for him, and I feel for him because I think he must feel threatened. There was one story I read in one of these several court cases where she actually had her ex-boyfriend in a headlock, pulling his hair out, and basically beating him up. I mean, so it's not like she's a little frail woman who is just, who's just in love with her ex-boyfriend. She is physically beating him up and emotionally beating him up, and it's just a mess. So I really hope that she gets her act together, and who knows, maybe we'll see her again in the ring someday once she cleans up her act. Maybe she'll work for Vince McMahon, maybe she'll work for TNA, one of these other federations. But needless to say, very sad story taking place with Sunny, formerly of the WWE. On the local news front, just continuing, and before we get to that, I want to remind you, and here we are, it's already 20 minutes into the program. The show flies by each and every week. If you happen to tune in late, the YouTube and Facebook information is on the bottom of the screen. And also, if you want to chime in on tonight's trivia question, it's which NFL team or teams have played in the most Super Bowls? Before I continue with the local news, I want to get to our first caller of the evening. And good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show.
Good evening, Mr. Cuomo.
Good evening, Mr. Dacey. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Not too bad. How's it going?
Good. Great to see you on the NHTV airwaves 2 nights in a row.
Yes, that's right. If anybody out there is watching, I was on Tom and Ed's 19-year anniversary show last night here at NHTV, and we had Tom had several guests on, Luann and John Sullivan, and anyone else that I missed, Tom?
Hollywood
J. Williams
and John Zimmerman from the Squared Circle.
That's right. Yeah. We had a call from my old co-worker, if you will, co-host, Bad News Bob, who made his call all the way from Las Vegas.
Yeah, it was great to talk to Bad News Bob again. You know, I haven't seen him, or talked to him really since he moved to Vegas. I talked to him occasionally on Facebook.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a great show, and so next year will be number 20, huh?
Yes, and I've already talked to Walter Mann this afternoon and got big plans for next year.
Great. Can't wait for it.
I wanted to answer your question about Sonny's boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Sonny's boyfriend's name is Damian Darling. He is also a wrestler, and I saw him recently at one of the independent shows that I went to with the Squared Circle.
So now she was married or dating Chris Candido, who passed away, right?
Yeah.
Who was Skip. His stage name was Skip. So now Damian Darling, I actually remember that name in the wrestling industry. Did he wrestle for Vince McMahon?
I believe so at one time.
Okay, and then that's her ex-boyfriend.
The show he was on, she was supposed to be with him.
Oh, okay.
But he still appeared by himself.
Wow. Terrible story. I mean, it's like every other week we hear about her stalking him. And, did you get a chance to talk to him at all about her, or not really?
No, they didn't really want to address it too much. I mean, there was a couple of cracks made about it, but that was about it.
Yeah.
By other wrestlers.
Well, I know Vince McMahon offered to send her to treatment and to rehab in Pennsylvania when she got out of her last court appearance. And I don't think she ever took him up on the offer.
No, I haven't heard anything on that either.
Yeah. Terrible story. I mean, you remember growing up watching her about 10, 15 years ago, and she had her act together, beautiful woman, very entertaining, and now it's like she did a total 360.
Yeah, and of course you and I have talked about how much wrestling has changed over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
It's not like it was back then.
No, not at all. I enjoyed it back then much more than I do today.
Now it's like watching General Hospital in prime time.
Right. It's based. They used to call it a male soap opera back then, but it's now truly a male soap opera.
And if you watch WWE on Monday and then TNA on Thursday nights, it's like they copy one another.
Right.
They can't come up with their own storylines.
Right. It's all about the ratings.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate the call, Tommy, and congratulations again on your 19-year anniversary last night.
Thank you. And can I take a stab at your trivia question?
Yes, you could. I mean, you already have several open mic mugs, but if you want another one, go for it.
Would one of the teams be the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yes, that is one of the team. They actually won 6 Super Bowls, but as I mentioned earlier, there was actually 2 teams, or there could be more than one team, and I will say Steelers is one of the 2 teams.
Would the other one happen to be the New England Patriots?
No, I'm sorry. Good guess, though. Good guess.
Okay, I thought I'd give it a shot, being that we are in New England.
Yeah. No, that's a very good guess, and hopefully somebody will get it, as you already gave them half of the answer. Hopefully they get the other half right.
And just a quick shameless plug, if I may.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Just to remind everybody once again that Mr. McCarver and myself will be at Lenny's Cafe on Center Street in Wallingford for our annual Super Bowl pregame show this Sunday. We will be taping from 5 to 6.
That's great, and you guys do that each and every year, right?
Yeah, so come down and see us and give us your prediction on the game.
Great. We will definitely keep that in mind. And do you want to give a prediction tonight, or do you want to wait till Sunday?
Nope, they're going to have to wait until Sunday.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Fair enough, Tom. Thanks for the call.
All right, we'll see you later on.
Yep. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Well, there's Tom Dacey calling in his weekly spot. And he got half of the trivia question right. In case you were not paying attention, he did say the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is half correct. There's which NFL teams have played in the most Super Bowls? Pittsburgh Steelers, and I'm looking for one more answer. And if you can give me the second part of this trivia question, at stake once again, ladies and gentlemen, the priceless open mic with Michael CUOMO coffee mug. So there you go. And with that being said, let's get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show.
Hey, Mike, it's John calling in.
Hey, Johnny, how are you, bud?
Good. Hopefully better tonight. Come on, Powerball.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Tonight's Wednesday. Yeah, the Powerball.
Yeah,
well,
great number tonight.
John, I was going to ask you if you want to take a stab at the trivia question.
Sure, why not?
It has to do with the NFL. And which two NFL teams have played in the most Super Bowls?
Ooh, you got that one.
Yeah, can't figure...
Well, give my favorite team, the New England Patriots.
No, unfortunately, the last caller guessed the Patriots too, and they are not in the in the answer. But that's a good guess because everybody would assume, you know.
Well, you know me, I gotta say my favorite team. So.
That's right. That's right. But anything else going on out there in Northford tonight?
No, nothing really. It's just same old same.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you calling, and don't forget the replay will be up on YouTube tomorrow. I know you usually watch the replays.
Yeah, it definitely will be watched.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
We'll talk to you next week, John. Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, we got two great calls in a row. John calling in his weekly spot, and he took a stab at the trivia question, and he said the Patriots. You know, Tom also guessed the Patriots, and that's a good guess. I mean, we've seen New England in a lot of Super Bowls, it would seem. Actually, they haven't won a Super Bowl since 2004, but that is not the correct answer. Again, what is the two teams that have played in the most Super Bowls? Tom correctly guessed the Pittsburgh Steelers as one half of the two teams. If you know the other part, you can give me a call, 203-234-0025. And with that being said, we'll get to our next caller. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic TV show.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Michael. How are you tonight?
Good evening. Ed McCarver, how are you?
Good, good. Listen, I'm glad you cleared up that thing about Sunny, because I always thought that her boyfriend was Chris Murphy, and that maybe Linda McMahon had him beat up. So.
Oh yeah. No, actually, she did have an ex-boyfriend named Chris, but it was Chris Candido.
Oh, okay.
Who actually passed away.
Current junior senator from Connecticut. So.
Right. So, Mr. McCarver, for anyone out there watching, was on the anniversary show last night with Tom, and congratulations, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. You know, Tom asked me to to co-host with him when I finished my run with John Sullivan, and I've been with Tom now, I think going on 9-10 years, but it's been a lot of fun. You know,
yeah.
I kind of like to poke fun at Tom and
right.
and his Miami Dolphins, but it is a pleasure to work for him, and it's a lot of fun.
That's great. Before I get to any of your questions, do you want to take a stab at the trivia question, or do you think you know it and you want to give it to someone else?
I want to give it to someone else, but let me just say, it's not the Minnesota Vikings, is it?
No.
Right.
It's surprising that no one's getting this. It's a very popular team But I mean, the Steelers is half of the equation. There's one more team out there.
Yeah.
But,
I know the Minnesota Vikings had a run back in the early days of the Super Bowl, and I think that minor league team from upstate New York, I think, was in a number of Super Bowls. But I don't know as many as the Steelers. They're in more than the Jets, so.
Right, that's true.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl on the angle of what's become very popular with people who aren't necessarily football fans, but who watch the Super Bowl.
Right.
And I think that's the commercials.
Yeah.
And I just saw that, just read that a 30-second Super Bowl commercial now is $4 million.
Wow, are you kidding?
And no.
They were just about 2-3 years ago, about, 1.7 and 2 million for a 30-second spot. So they basically doubled in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's I think it's going to be probably the highest rated show of the year, and it usually is. I think the last show of MASH, when that ended up, I think had a higher rating than the Super Bowl. But traditionally, every TV in America will be watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the commercials. I think they're funny. I just mind the, and I'm going to get a lot of heat for saying this, but the women who are the first time, women out there who watch the game who have no clue what a first down is and a touchdown and this and that, you got to explain to them all the rules, It's like, why don't you, prepare yourself before the Super Bowl so we don't have to answer every question,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, my bride is a pretty she's not that knowledgeable a football fan. She likes the Patriots, but she knows what a fumble is, and she knows how football players cheat being a Patriot fan.
Right.
But there'll be some funny commercials. There is a controversial one. Volkswagen has a spot coming up that they may or may not run because there's a little bit of I don't want to get into the controversy now, but it will be it'll be aired Sunday, and they're talking about it now. What some of the sponsors do is they leak the Super Bowl commercials before the game actually plays just to get some juice running for it.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, as crazy as $4 million sounds for a Super Bowl commercial, Ed, I think it's worth it for these companies to advertise.
If they have the money in the budget.
Yeah.
Because you'll find the day after the Super Bowl, once they finish talking about the game, everybody will be talking about the commercials.
Right.
The Budweiser horses, and I remember that the Budweiser frogs made their debut in the Super Bowl years ago. And my favorite was Terry Tate, office linebacker, who was if people broke the rules in this office, Terry Tate, who was dressed in full football gear, would tackle people in the office for not having a cover letter with their sheet, or taking a little bit longer on their break, or making a long distance phone call. If you go on YouTube and you plug in Terry Tate office linebacker, there's some hilarious spots.
Oh, okay.
So, well, that's it for me. Enjoying the program, and I'll let Tom. We'll hold off and make my prediction on the Super Bowl at a later date.
Well, that's fair, and I'm going to get to my Super Bowl prediction later on in the show.
Okay, look forward to it.
All right, Ed, take care.
All right, Michael, you have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, 3 great calls in a row. Let's keep them going, folks. Ed McCarver calling in, who I saw last night here at the studio. He was co-hosting with Tom on their anniversary show. And I actually have some Jet news that I want to get to regarding, speaking of Ed McCarver, I'll get to that in the sports news in a few minutes. But again, if you think you want to take a stab, or you know the answer to the trivia question, it's which 2 NFL teams, I'll get that out there now, it is 2, have played in the most Super Bowls. The first part of the answer, which Tom answered earlier, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you know the second part of the question and you want to call in, an open mic mug with Michael Cuomo is up for grabs. Give me a call, 203-234-00 888-265-0025. Just quickly rounding up some local news, and then we'll get to the sports. North Branford schools have come out on record to actually say that they're going to be hiring 6 armed guards to monitor their schools, to provide extra security, beef up security. This is in wake of the Newtown school shootings at the Sandy Hook Elementary School. So they're actually budgeting 6 armed guards who are going to be trained by the North Branford Police Department, and they're going to be in the North Branford schools. So, you know, my take on it, it's a good idea, but my feeling is, you know, if you had to choose, would you rather have guards beefed up in North Branford or maybe New Haven? You know, you kind of want to go where statistics show there's more crime on a daily basis, and I think that if they were able to budget more, you know, armed guards at New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, some of the city schools, that might be a better idea than a North Branford school, which you very seldom hear of any you know, problems going on. But then again, on the play devil's advocate, we really didn't hear of any crime down in Newtown when this terrible tragedy took place a few weeks ago. So you just never know where you know, a situation or a school shooting is going to take place. But definitely the presence of armed guards should hopefully deter, and we say hopefully, you never know, but should hopefully deter any, you know, student from trying to bring a weapon to school and cause, you know, mass casualties and harm. So so good for North Branford. Maybe other schools will start copying them and finding, you know, some money in their budget to beef up security at their schools. Finally, on the local news front, there's an Easton, Connecticut couple who they were charged recently with bilking more than $43,000 from the UI company, the UI Electric Company, over a 7-year run, basically. Police believe the couple were damaging the meter shortly after they moved into their house in 2005, and UI officials say that the meters were pinned so they wouldn't register the true amount of electricity that was used. So, you know, over the course of 7 years, they did the math and they basically got away with $43,000 worth of electricity. Now, if you think about it, in a most common, you know, situation over a 7-year period, I think $43,000 is excessive, and that's probably because these people must have had on every light, computer, you know, the pool warming up, hot tubs going on, because they knew they weren't paying the true amount. Because if you do the math, let's say your electric bill, we'll be conservative and say it's $200 a month. You know, if you do the math, that's $2,400 a year, and over 7 years, if I'm doing the math correctly, that's $16,800 over 7 years. So they were basically almost triple that amount. So you can only imagine how much they were abusing and how much electricity they were actually using to rack up a bill of over $43,000. So again, folks, each and every week I say, you know, just when I think I've heard it all, seen it all, I get surprised by another story here. So it's always something coming up each and every week. All right, I'd hate the show to go on or to finish tonight without anyone getting the trivia question. So if Nick, our producer Nick in the back, can put up the trivia question, there it is. Thank you. Which NFL team has played in the most Super Bowls, folks? I thought it was going to be a very easy question, but apparently it's stumping a lot of people. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers and who else? Give me a call, 203-234-0025. If you win correctly and you want, you can get a open mic coffee mug sent to you absolutely free. We have about 20 minutes, so you know, you can do whatever you have to do to find the answer. But I thought it was going to be a lot easier than this. I try not to stump people too hard, and I thought by now people would get it. But I guess I picked a good question this week. All right, so let's move on now to some sports. That's as I wanted to make most of the show about sports, and here we are with only 20 minutes left, so we'll do what we can. As we all know, this Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, Super Bowl 47, kickoff is around 6:30 p.m. from the, what's it called now, the Mercedes Dome in New Orleans. I always used to call it the Superdome. I think they changed over to the Mercedes Dome. 49ers against the Baltimore Ravens, the battle of the Harbaugh brothers. As of the show tonight, the San Francisco 49ers were a 3.5-point favorite. And, you know, looking at the game, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think this is going to be a blowout from either side. You know, I'm going to give you my pick now, and I'm going to base it on two things. One, I'm going to base it on momentum, and second, I'm going to base it on my gut feeling. And what I'm going to tell you is, even if the San Francisco 49ers were to pull a win and they were to squeak a victory out on Sunday, I don't think they would even be able to cover the 3.5 points. I think it's going to be that close of a game if the 49ers were to win. But I'm going to go on the record, and I'm going to predict the Baltimore Ravens will win Super Bowl 47, obviously covering the 3.5-point spread as underdogs. And I'm going to give you a final score. My final score, now write it down so next week we can see how close I was. I'm going to say final score, Baltimore Ravens 31-27. So 31-27 is my final score. Baltimore Ravens winning Super Bowl 47. Take the 3.5 points, and I think Ray Lewis will retire on top. It'll be a great story for Ray Lewis, for the Ravens. As much as I like the San Francisco 49ers and what they've done, I think that defense, in most cases, wins championships. Not to say the 49ers don't have a good defense. They have one of the best defenses in the league, but a couple of their key players are banged up. And I think when you're playing hot at just the right time, you have your players that are healthy, and the whole team has basically come around to play for Ray Lewis. They know it's his last game. They know that the Vince Lombardi trophy is at stake. So I think they're going to pull this out. It's going to be a great game. And I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, as I'm predicting 31-27. I think there will be points scored. It's going to be a back-and-forth contest. I think in the end, though, I can see the 49ers scoring a field goal and the Ravens, scoring a touchdown, and that's how the Ravens go ahead by winning by 4. So, again, Baltimore 31, San Fran 27. Okay, the only other thing I have in the NFL spectrum is the New York Jets, and this doesn't surprise me at all that the New York Jets would be interested in talking to this former number one overall pick, I think in 2008, 2009, I don't remember. If anyone out there remembers Jamarcus Russell, who was I think he was the Oakland Raiders' number 1 draft pick, quarterback out of LSU. And he has been labeled as one of the biggest, if not the biggest, NFL bust in the history of the NFL. Well, there you go. Now the New York Jets are reportedly interested in talking to Jamarcus Russell to bring him in as a New York Jet. Again, this is just mere speculation. I don't think that Jamarcus Russell has much left in the tank. I think his image has been tarnished. He's been labeled a quitter. Basically took his $42 million guaranteed money. He's already spent it, supposedly, according to several reports. So, another name that comes to mind when I think of Jamarcus Russell is Vince Young, who's been a quarterback that's been bouncing around from team to team to team, most recently with my Buffalo Bills, and then they released him, and as of now, he, as far as I know, doesn't have a team that he's playing for. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this whole Mark Sanchez, Tim Tebow, as far as I can guarantee he is no longer going to be a New York Jet. He's going to part ways with the Jets. Where he ends up is a great question, and in what capacity. He wants to be a starting NFL quarterback. I could see him going to Buffalo. You know, Buffalo does need a quarterback, although we are looking to draft someone in the draft. We have the 8th overall pick, so we are looking at Tyler Wilson from Arkansas, Ryan Nassib from Syracuse. But again, Tim Tebow, you know, if he doesn't go to Buffalo, maybe he can go to Arizona and be a starter. He can go to Jacksonville. He can go to, well, Miami's got Tannehill, but he can go to a lot of places and you know, see if he can create that spark that he brought to the Denver Broncos. So we shall see what happens as the NFL season or off season starts, and the draft's only a couple months away, which is great. Now the other big story, we're going to part ways with NFL information here. I want to just quickly talk about this whole Alex Rodriguez debacle, and in case you're not familiar with what's going on with A-Rod, he's in the middle of another doping investigation that took place in Miami at a clinic after reports surfaced that he was getting PEDs, which stands for performance-enhancing drugs, from a doctor down in Miami, who apparently this doctor was giving these to several other baseball players, some retired, some currently playing. So A-Rod has denied the allegations. However, this is starting another investigation from Major League Baseball, the Commissioner's Office, the New York Yankees, etc. A-Rod, who is 37 years old, is actually not even thought to play any baseball this year because of his surgery he just had. There's a very small chance that he'll be able to even play this year. So now it's going to be interesting to see if these reports are true that A-Rod was involved with this doping scandal. Then it'll be interesting to see if the Yankees, I don't know if they can eat the contract, if that's the only choice, if they could somehow not have to pay him the remainder of his salary because of this. I mean, if you recall, he signed a 10-year, $275 million deal with the Yankees, and I think he's about halfway through the contract. So obviously the Yankees are kicking themselves right now because of the terrible return they got from A-Rod. I mean, if you just take away the 2009 World Series they won, that's the only time A-Rod in his career with the Yankees has really paid back dividends, for what they've paid him. And the whole thought was they were going to have him be a Yankee until the day he retired, in hopes that he would break the all-time home run record currently held by Barry Bonds, which I don't think is going to happen, seeing he's not going to play most of this year, and seeing that if he is now going to be under a microscope for taking drugs, his records are tarnished. I mean, he's in the same category as Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Rafael Palmeiro, Roger Clemens, Sammy Sosa, and now you're going to hear Alex Rodriguez in the same pool of names. And Katie Couric interviewed A-Rod several years ago to ask him about his involvement in taking steroids and PEDs, and he, if I recall, he denied the reports and then came back a few months later under another interview and said yes, he did take them. I think it was 2001 to 2003, and then he was clean since 2003. Problem with that is this Miami doctor from this clinic, it looks like the information gathered is from 2009 to the present. So if it's true, then obviously A-Rod's lying again, and numbers don't lie. If he was going in 2009, then he's obviously lying that he's been clean since 2003. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens, but obviously baseball suffered another black eye once this story came out with A-Rod. So we'll see. If there's any Yankee fans out there that want to call and express what you think about A-Rod now that this new information has surfaced, I'd love to hear from you. And final thing on the sports front, speaking of the Yankees, they just they released their pitcher Freddie Garcia, who's been kind of bouncing around. He just signed with the San Diego Padres, I think for a one-year deal. So that's it. That's all on the sports news. Again, if you tuned in late, Super Bowl prediction, I'm going with the Baltimore Ravens 31, San Francisco 49ers 27 as my Super Bowl pick. We only have about 10 minutes left. If you want to call in and try to answer the trivia question, which two NFL teams played in the most Super Bowls? Give me a call, 203-234-0025. And let's see if you can get the answer. One team that's already been mentioned is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I just need the other team. If nobody gets it, I'll obviously give you the answer in the next several minutes. But I thought it was going to be an easier trivia question than I anticipated. Surprised that so many people were stumped by it. I will give you another hint. This team that is part of it's the Pittsburgh Steelers and this other team was a very dominant team in the 1990s. Specifically the early 90s right up to about 95. So that's another hint, and a very good hint that I will give you. So anyway, give me a call if you know the answer to the question. We're going to just wrap up the show with some news of the weird, some odd stories that I want to quickly mention to you, and then we'll wrap things up here. I'll give you the answer to the trivia question, assuming nobody calls. There's a 15-year-old Buffalo native girl, Giovanna Plowman, who has made internet news recently. Her videos have gone viral. And she's made headlines by putting a used bloody tampon in her mouth. And I'm not making this stuff up. And she is now married, according to her Facebook page, to a guy, also from New York. His name is Dino Bruscia. And this guy is just as bad as her. He was actually on the internet eating ice cream that was laced with human feces. So we have this girl and this guy who have now supposedly gotten together via Facebook as a Facebook marriage. And, you know, I don't know. What does this world come to? We're going to get to a caller now. I hear we have a caller on the line. Good evening, caller. You're live on the Open Mic Show.
Hello, you have a question. Who played in the most Super Bowls?
Yes. What's your answer?
Well, there's two of them. Pittsburgh, 8, and Dallas, 8.
There you go. Very good, sir. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys. I'm surprised it took 53 minutes for someone to guess, but I am glad that you got the answer. And can I have your name, sir?
Joe Carafino.
Bill, was it?
Joe,
I'm sorry. What town you calling from?
North Haven.
North Haven. Well, Joe, congratulations. And if you want, a open mic coffee mug is ready for you. If you want to call back after the show's over, we can either mail one out to you or you can come by the studio. But if you call the same number you called now, right after 9 o'clock, we can have the producer talk to you about getting a mug out to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for calling, Joe.
You're welcome. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. Congratulations, Joe. I think he said Carafino from North Haven, who correctly guessed, ladies and gentlemen, the two NFL teams who have played in the most Super Bowls were the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys, each playing in 8 Super Bowls. So congratulations, Joe. And again, call in right after the show at the same number, 234-0025, to claim your prize. So I'm glad we got it. I just, like I said, I didn't realize that I was going to stump so many people. And 3/4 of the show is over, and we finally got an answer, so I'm glad. But so anyway, yeah, this whole Facebook marriage thing is a debacle, and it's amazing what people will do now, you know, to actually be seen on the internet, to make a name for themselves. I mean, what happened to doing what I do and just do a good old-fashioned local cable access talk show? You know, I mean, why do you have to succumb to such bloody measures, if you will? This is a great story. A 30-year-old Wisconsin drunk was found passed out in a Chevy Cavalier with the engine running, and he was actually wearing a T-shirt that read, "Been drinking, free breathalyzer test, blow here," and there was an arrow pointing down towards his crotch. So we can only imagine what the police thought once they pulled over this guy and read his shirt. And finally, I have another story involving a drunk. A 57-year-old man in Massachusetts was arrested and charged with drunk driving after he drove past two large signs that read, "Do not enter" and "Police personnel only." And he was on the wrong lane of the driveway, and he drove into the back lot of a police station. So he's going through two signs: "Do not enter," "Police personnel only." He's drunk out of his mind. He pulls into the back rear lot of a police station in the driveway. Officers obviously are right there. They gave him a field sobriety test, and he failed. So the only good thing out of this whole story was they were able to walk him from his car right to the station, and it was probably a 30-second walk, so it made everyone's life easier. But these are stories you just cannot make up, ladies and gentlemen. And as I say each and every week, when you think you've heard it all, seen it all, witnessed it all, just wait, because there's always some other story that's going to throw you off guard. But all right, just to recap, ladies and gentlemen, we have just about a couple minutes left. My Super Bowl prediction, in case you tuned in late, I'm predicting the Baltimore Ravens will beat the San Fran 49ers. 31-27 is my pick. Obviously taking the 3.5 points that Baltimore's getting, but I still think they're going to win outright. Again, if you want to tune in to the Facebook and YouTube page, it's on the bottom of your screen. I encourage you to become a fan of the Open Mic Show on Facebook.com. And then if you go to YouTube.com, you can watch replays of tonight's show, last week's show, and the last, 50 shows that I've had. Most of them are on YouTube, showing a majority of guests that I've had on. Speaking of guests, I know I haven't had any guests on since Tom and Ed in the first show. I am still working aggressively on getting some guests to come on. If anybody out there in TV land knows of a guest, whether they're from North Haven or anywhere in the state, or in the world for that matter, that wants to come on the Open Mic Show and talk about whatever their company or organization they're affiliated with, charitable organization, whatever it might be, you can reach me on Facebook or call here at the studio and pass along any suggestions you might have. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we are just about out of time. Another great show. I want to thank all the callers out there for calling tonight. And obviously, we couldn't do the show without you. I want to thank Nick in the back control room, along with John. And for everyone here at the NHTV studio, I'm your host, Michael CUOMO. I will see you next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock live. Thank you very much for watching.